Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to catch up and chat with amazing humans about their journey with mental health. Today, I have the great pleasure in introducing Karen Hutchings to this conversation. Welcome, Karen.
Hello, nice to see you again.
Oh, lovely to see you. As always, I'll just do a very quick introduction to Karen for everybody that's listening, and then I'll ask you to do your introduction, let people know who you really are. Karen and I have known each other now for well over 20 years, I would say, and we first met in the business travel industry, where we were both working for the same organization. Over the years, we've both evolved in our roles, of course, and it's just fantastic to come back and have a chat about how Karen's stayed within the travel industry, the amazing work that she's been doing as well. We'll talk about that a bit later, but I will let you do your introduction, please, Karen. Off you go.
Perfect. So Karen Hutchings, now the Global Head of Travel Meetings and Events at EY. And I'm not going to say how many years I've been in the travel industry or associated with the travel meetings and events industry, but it is a long time. Although I could say that we met in play school when we talk about knowing each other over 20 years. Started my career though in the airlines. Then I went into the agency, which is where we met. And then from there, I went into managing travel programs and travel meetings and events programs within the corporate world. And interestingly, had an opportunity before I joined EY to step out of travel. And I spoke to somebody that's my external mentor, always be my external mentor. And I remember them saying to me about when I came to this crossroads, do I want to stay in travel and in the area that I'm passionate about, or do I want to take a completely different direction? And it was a really interesting question for me to consider. And what it made me realize is my absolute passion is this industry that we're in. And so at that point, I made the decision that this is where I would actually finish my career as well, because I actually don't see me going anywhere else now. But it was an interesting consideration at that time for sure. But I couldn't be happier. And despite what we're going through at the moment, as far as the pandemic, it still is and will continue to be one of the best industries to be in, I would say.
Oh, I love it. And, you know, it's great to have you, and your positivity is very infectious. And I think that's a key to this as well, is, you know, let's try and see the positives in where we're at. It is an amazing industry. You know, I had many years of great times, great memories in that industry as well. Obviously, I'm in a different direction at the moment. I'm talking about mental health and working hard on this conversation. So that's where we're at. Let's talk about mental health. So your journey with mental health, Karen, can you define it for us? Tell us a story. Go on.
So I think it's interesting for me, and it was funny when you'd asked me to participate in this, because it is actually surprisingly, perhaps for some, something that I am really interested and passionate about. I think me as an individual, though, I am a glass full person. You know, it's probably 90% full, always has been, and I don't think it's going to change now. But I think, though, what's interesting is the impact that you can have on others when you have that sort of outlook as well. And so many people know that my husband suffers from depression, has suffered from it from a very long time. And really, as long as we've been together, he's had it. And so I see the challenges around mental health from the other side. And I think what's interesting, though, is when you're a very positive individual and your glass is full and you're with somebody that suffers from depression, sometimes those two don't meet. And I think that's an interesting scenario to always consider, which I think people don't realize perhaps what it's like to be on the other side of being with somebody that suffers from real mental health issues. I think the other thing, talking about that journey, though, and we probably can get into more detail about John, but I think then when I think about the pandemic and the impact that that's had on me in curbing my wings and not being able to travel, I get my energy from people. And I get my energy from getting out there, being in front of people, interacting, socializing. And so this has been really interesting for me in going through the whole pandemic, because next week will have been my last flight a year ago. And so I've not really seen anybody from the team for over a year, except for a couple of pockets that I did when we were able to in the UK, a few of us got together. And so that meant that we really had to change how we adapted to this as well, to make sure, because candidly, I think a lot of people in our world are extroverts. They are people persons, or person people. I'm not sure which way you say that.
Yeah, one of
but
them.
anyway, that they like that interaction. Yeah. And so for me, managing a team of 150 was about, how do you carry on creating that? And so that's how we got into our Workout Wednesdays. That's how we got into our casual catch-ups. We did children's hours. We've done all sorts of different things, really, to keep everybody motivated. And actually, that's been a real positive that's come out of this. I actually think as a team, we are more connected because we've not been on flying somewhere to see each other, because we're in 28 countries, but we've been able to be on many of the Microsoft Teams calls to interact with each other. And I can tell you, Workout Wednesdays for me has been the highlight of my week, because watching us all bouncing around, doing star jumps, actually is just very funny. Very, very funny. But I'll take a pause, but I think, you know, I have two different elements of the journey that really have defined me with mental health, I would say.
Brilliant. And you know, that's the reality of what we're all seeing and doing, isn't it? Sometimes we've got one side of us that we show a lot to, you know, which is the workspace, where we're engaged, we're supporting others, we're doing the right things. And I'm really obviously very fascinated about the life at home, because ultimately we're a human all the time. That's what I'm really passionate about. And, you know, that human never changes. We change sometimes what we show in the way that we show ourselves to others. And I think what you're doing is just incredible. I do want to talk a little bit about your experience within the home environment with that. You know, you made this really interesting comment in there about, you know, your glass is full, and obviously somebody with depression, the challenge you've got is that their glass is often empty. That's how they feel. There is no hope. What do you do to balance that? How can you balance that?
It's hard. I'm not going to lie. It's really hard, actually. And I think, you know, I don't have much patience, because I am that sort of gregarious type person. And so when you're with somebody that doesn't want to get out of bed sometimes, that don't want to do anything, and that everything is a problem, it's not easy. I think, you know, candidly, sometimes I don't pass any comment. I just let him do what he needs to do, because at the end of the day, for somebody with depression, in fairness, they have to help themselves. You know, the one thing I don't do is set expectations of what I want him to do. Yeah. So I don't say that something has to be done, because that's not fair, because that's putting pressure on somebody. Okay. What's interesting, though, is that if he has jobs to do and they get ticked off, then there's a real positive attitude, because he's achieved things. And so there's a fine balance between coming up with things that need to be done, but not setting deadlines for when they should be done. Because, you know, there are going to be some days when they're feeling that low that they're just not going to get out of bed. And you have to be accepting of that. And sometimes I'm not very accepting of that, candidly, because I struggle with that, because I get up at 6:30 every day. I'm up, lively, and the sort of craziness that goes on with me happens immediately when I get up. Yeah. Whereas for him, it's not like that. And so I think, though, it was interesting in that when he went to his counsellor, and I think I irritated him sometimes many years ago, what the counsellor said was, though, that I was the perfect person, because of the fact that I was this lively, gregarious, get up and go sort of individual, which, not to make him feel guilty in any way, but just to make him see another side of things. What's interesting is that his well-being has been much better through the pandemic. And he has openly said that he thinks the pandemic's been brilliant, because I've been at home all the time. And so there is always a positive of these negative things, isn't it? And for him, the fact that I've been home, he's been much better over his mental well-being. Now, I put some of it down to the fact that we got a dog as well in January. And I think that made a huge difference to him too, for sure. But it's interesting, though, whereas I'm like crying out to travel, because I feel like my wings have been clipped. For him, it's been a real positive that I have been at home. I'd also add as well, you know, he's a very keen sports person. And definitely when he goes out and trains, whether it is mountain biking, on the road riding, or whatever it is he may do, that really helps. The endorphins that are released definitely helps. He's also an extreme mountain biker, though, because he does downhill racing. And the interesting element of that is the competitiveness really comes out. And invariably he wins because he's brilliant for his age.
Right.
But then that whole adrenaline thing, then after the adrenaline's dropped, then he can sink if he's not careful. And so it's a real fine balance. But I think, though, what I would say, though, is for people living with people with it, it's okay to say it's hard, because I think I was always so worried about him. I never actually said that it was actually quite difficult for me, you know, and so now sometimes I do remind him that sometimes it is quite tough being on the other side as well. Not often, but sometimes, because I think we need to recognize that too. And for sure, he knows that and recognizes that. And on the down times, he actually couldn't care less. But on the other times is really appreciative. And when you get the comment like, the pandemic's been brilliant for me because you've been home, that really, really hits the heart for sure.
Yeah, of course. No, and I love the way you put that perspective around it as well. And that's why these stories are so important for us to understand everybody's perspectives. You know, you're interpreting his words and it's making you feel a certain way. And it is so true as a carer of somebody who has a serious, you know, it is a serious condition and it's a sad reality that you have to work on, and it's not a fixed, or you don't recover from it necessarily 100%. And it's just making sure you manage those moments, right? And you've put those out there very eloquently and very well in that reality. So you know, you've been grounded for a year, as many people in this industry, in the travel industry, have been. You know, have you missed it?
I have. I mean, I think I miss cultures. I think I miss seeing different cultures. I mean, like India, I would go to regularly. I would always have a trip out to Asia Pacific, Latin America, the US. I would go to 2 or 3 times. And I think I just miss that, the variety of life. And I think when you've had the variety of life and then suddenly you don't have it, I think you are going to miss it. What I will say, though, is that it's given me an opportunity, because I need goals. You know, everybody needs goals, I think. It's given me an opportunity to get back into shape, though. I think it started when I got a challenge from one of the team to do 25 press-ups every day for 25 days.
Right.
Who the hell wanted to see me doing press-ups, quite frankly? I feel very sorry for everybody on Facebook, but they had to tolerate it for 25 days.
Okay.
But what was great about that was I started on my knees, and by day 20, I could do all of them upright. And it suddenly made me realize that I can get back into shape again, because the medals behind. I used to run a lot of marathons and got injured, fell off horses too often and stopped. And so I got back into shape, though, and I actually have lost probably nearly 3 stone since June. And that's because I got back into running again. And that was really the workout things. And being grounded gave me the opportunity. I didn't have the excuses of, well, I'm going through time zones, I'm traveling, I'm always entertaining, and all of these things that I gave as reasons as to why I couldn't get myself into shape went away. And so that's been a real positive for me, for sure. And part of it as well has been like inspiring and working with the team. So we've got like a Push to Be Healthy group on Facebook, several of us are on. We've got a Yammer page, and we actually started in January a challenge amongst our team and the procurement team of EY. So you either do a 5K, a 10K, 21K in one go, and you can walk, you can run, or you can cycle. But the key point is to challenge yourself. Or you can do a 50K, 100 or 150 over 5 weeks, again, to challenge yourself. So there's me, of course, decided that I'm going to do the 21K and the 150K. So it's become a little bit obsessive, but we're all sharing our pictures and our progress. And I have to say, that makes my job so interesting when you can come up with something like that has motivated others to actually get out there and do things. And And, candidly, I'm very open with the team to say, take an hour out of the day or an hour and a half or whatever it is you need to do to get out. And whether it be a walk or a run or whatever it is, just go and do it, because we're all sitting in our boxes for a long time now, and we need the headspace. And so for me, that's been a real positive of the whole lockdown thing, for sure. And I think I just want to read you a quote actually that came from one of the team, because I think this really made it worthwhile of the effort, because sometimes you feel like you're doing these things and nobody could care less. But what you don't realize is that not everybody needs to talk about these things, but they're just getting on with it. And I had this one note come from somebody in the team and said, Karen, just a quick note to thank you for providing the space and push for us to focus on our physical health. It's really making a big difference in the way I feel, both physically and mentally, to be able to get my workouts in with no judgment. And when I read that, I was so chuffed, candidly, because it was like, it came from somebody that's pretty quiet and never really passes much comment. But it obviously is making a difference. And I think, when you lead people, manage people, have big teams, you are responsible for that. And I think you need to remember that perhaps if you're not doing something about these things, somebody else may not be. And I'm fairly tough on my team in the fact that, most of them manage groups within our team. And I expect them to do things, because do I necessarily want to do everything all the time to motivate them? No. But am I going to do it? Yes, I am, because it's the right thing to do when you manage people. And so I sort of put that expectation on others. And some of them are out of their comfort zone with it and perhaps haven't done it as much as they should do. And they're being pushed now to do it, because if we want to go up the ladder, the career ladder, you're having to be made uncomfortable, aren't you? And that's part of it. And so for me, seeing the people, do their first run of 5K or their first walk of 5K or whatever it may be, is brilliant. And I think it's helped our motivation in our team, for sure, through such difficult times.
Oh, definitely. And, I think what's fascinating in there, the question I asked was, do you miss travel? And what you've actually found is that by not traveling, your time has changed, your availability to do these things. And this is where the balance for the future, I think, is going to be quite a difficult one to make, because once everything comes back to, let's say, what it looked like, or maybe not quite what it looked like previously, are people going to stop doing that? Because, you want to encourage them to do it continually, right? You want it to be part of the normal process of every day, every routine. We talked a little bit about that thought of busy before we recorded this. What are your thoughts on that? How are you going to continue that, do you think?
I mean, I do not candidly see me traveling as much going forward, for sure. I think that there will be some things that we can do virtually that we don't necessarily need to do in person. I think there'll be some travel, but I just don't think there'll be the same. Candidly, Betsy, my EA manages to keep me busy anyway, whether I'm on a plane or I'm not.
Right, yeah.
But that's my reality that I live with. But on the other hand, though, Workout Wednesdays for me will continue as long as I'm here. And if I happen to go somewhere else, which is pretty unlikely, but I would encourage anybody else to do that. It's not for everybody, and this is not a compulsory participation, but for those people that enjoy it, then they can participate. And I think that's the key thing around it. And so I do think that, and also we do like a casual catch up on a Friday. And, for the US, it's their lunchtime. For Europe, it's, 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. Asia, it's much later, and they do their own thing. But those types of things, I think we will still continue as well, because they're just drop-in sessions. And I don't think we ever thought about doing them before, because we were going to the office or whatever was happening. But why, actually? And so I think there are many behaviours that we've actually started that we will continue, because, keeping people connected actually is part of supporting people's well-being, because we had a lot of people that worked permanently from home as well. Well, actually, they probably needed this connections, which we just didn't think about at that time. And now we'll just make sure that we continue with it. And for me, you know, I really hope that I will continue with the habits that I got into as well, you know, whether it be the running, walking, and all of those things, because actually it's better for me. You know, when you get to a certain age, you need to keep an eye on all of these things. And I think that's where I'm at now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? It's sort of we've had this moment to pause. This is a real opportunity to pause, and what's fascinating in what you've just said is around this thought that said we never did it before.
Yeah.
Why didn't we do it before? And I think that's sometimes the challenge, isn't it? We get so caught up in this world of, you know, the wheels are turning, everything's moving, everything's going, and we just carry on, that we sometimes forget to stop and think about what we can do to change some of those things and improve it. I think there is a balance to be found, definitely. I don't know what the balance looks like, but time is the critical element in all of that, not spending so much time out traveling, commuting, whatever it is. Do you see a day going back to the office, Karen?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I was never in the office that much because of where I live versus where the office is.
Sure.
But definitely, I mean, I think though it'll be different. I mean, it may be as well that we will meet in different places.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know whether we will always need to meet in London as an example. It could be elsewhere that we could meet. But I mean, I think what will happen, and one of the things that I realized though is when we go to the office, we go to interact with each other going forward. What was happening is I would go to the office and then I would be on calls the whole day.
Yeah.
Well, that defeats the point of me going to the office, because actually we need the people interaction with the team. And so the next, you know, when we start to go back to the office, my rule will be that we have minimal meetings outside of meeting with each other. Because that's the thing that this has made me realize is that we do need that interaction with each other.
Yep.
And we need that people engagement, and just being on the phone in the office defeats the objective of why you've gone there, candidly. And so that I definitely see will change, but we will go back to the office for sure.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are talking about like hybrid, and it'll be sort of part, and you know, when you've got a day full of calls, why do you need to be in the presence of in a physical location like that necessarily? It's just lots of things that are changing, I think, and evolving. We're evolving as humans, and actually doing some benefit for the planet as well.
Well, we were always like that actually. So we never really had full-time office working, so it was always a little bit different. But I think it'll evolve more. I think candidly as well, you know, with John's words in my ears ringing true about me not traveling has been great for him. I have to remember that as well. And I don't want to go back to that 2 weeks away a month, you know, or whatever it was as much, because it has impacted him. And I perhaps didn't realize quite as much, you know, and now I do.
And I think that's part of the sort of the curtain that's lifting a little bit, is this realization of the impact that our travel was having on others. And you know, I talk about travel well-being, as you well know, and you know, in business, travel well-being is such an important part to me because it was one of the reasons I had my own challenges. But we often forget that there's people behind the person. So our best supporters are actually the ones that rarely get seen in this conversation. You know, so it's interesting that you're sort of hearing the voice that John's saying, you know, about why and how. Do you think you travel too much then? Do you think that was the case?
I think I did. Yeah. I think I did. I think I don't think it was travel that, I mean, it was important. I mean, that was the reality, is it was important and it needed to be done. But I think though, some of it could be done differently going forward, you know, and I think we just need to reset, don't we? And think about what really is important, and make sure that there's a real purpose.
Yeah.
And you know, and I'm making it sound like there wasn't, because there always was. But I just need to figure out how we can do some of it differently, because of the planet as well, you know, sustainability targets that we have as an example, and then the whole individual wear and tear. You know, I didn't actually realize probably the impact it was having on me personally from my own well-being, and then of course the impact of my husband.
And that's the other element, isn't it? The wear and tear of the human. And I'm, you know, this has got to be something that we're taking away from this current part, which is understanding, you know, we are feeling, of course, there's a lot of anxiety amongst people, and it's not to try and dismiss that, because that's one of the biggest challenges of the pandemic for many, the fear, the worry, the concern. But also, you've said it, you started to train again, you've lost some weight, you've got fitter. We want to continue on that path. I think that's such a critical point. Can you see your travel program evolving to embrace and embed that, or did it already, or do you feel that there's more work that you can do in there?
Yeah, I mean, we'd just launched our own internal social network tool, actually, EY Travel Buddy.
Yep.
And that was around enabling our employees to be able to meet each other when they were on the road, because, you know, we had people that were that tool for was to be able to organize social events in the evenings. Unfortunately, we launched it in November 2019, and of course then we really shut down most of our travel by February, March 2020. But one of the other things that we've been talking about with the hotels in particular was around, you know, could they do a yoga class in the morning in a particular city, or a Peloton, or an organized run somewhere. And that was really about trying to bring in some well-being for our employees. And the feedback that we had, as an example, from the social elements that we've done in the evenings was so positive. And it was great, because often one of the team would be at the event, and there was different people from different service lines, didn't know each other, but had traveled on their own. And then they were socializing with other EY people. So it was a closed community, but it enabled them to interact, because it's lonely, actually. I mean, travel, if you're regularly on the road on your own, can be very lonely. And I think this just gave a break from that for the individual. So we anticipated that it was going to be huge, and we still got it there, and we're going to absolutely launch it again once travel comes back, because I think it's going to be really important, especially with the number of different things that we can use it for. You know, I think that's the important thing for sure.
Brilliant. And, you know, anything I 100% understand the loneliness of travel and the isolation. And, you know, I always remember going to offices and everybody went home. I went back to the hotel, and it was just the sort of the realization that, you know, other people have lives too. and then you're not part of that, and it's hard. And so I think that's a great concept, you know, and it will come back, like you say. We're going to wrap shortly, but I just, as I always do, I'll give you the final words of, you know, what you want to say to the listeners of this. I just want to say, from my perspective, Karen, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you. I absolutely love the chance to have any of these conversations, especially around these topics of mental health and the journey, and supporting others, and encouraging, you know, people to stay well and open about whatever's going on in their lives. So thank you. So I'll hand it to you. Final words, anything you want to say, share, thoughts, quotes, anything.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think, you know, I'm fortunate that I lead a team. I'm responsible for a team. And I think we have to all use that as an opportunity. I think that, you know, we are responsible for them in many ways. And I think always use your voice to make a difference. And whether that be well-being or support or whatever it may be, I think always use what you have to be able to make a difference. And you know I don't get it right with my husband and what he suffers from regularly, and probably get it wrong more often than not. But I am here though, always. And I think that's the important thing. And I think, you know, I'm a natural fixer, and I can't fix that. And that frustrates me. But on the other hand, though, I just need to remember that what he's going through is much, much worse than what I'm going through. And so don't beat him up, and definitely don't beat myself up in the fact that I can't fix it, but just make sure I'm always here. So that would be my wise words at the end of this.
Oh, thank you, Karen. No, and I appreciate that. And you know, we can't fix it. That's so true. It's just sometimes just being there is such a valuable thing, and let's keep on doing that. Let's keep being there for each other. Let's keep being there to support each other. So again, thank you so much. As I always do at the end of these sessions, if anybody is struggling or does need any extra help or support, always know there's somebody there that you can talk to. more than welcome. You can get in touch with me if you need to ask any questions. But also in the UK, we have a wonderful organisation called Samaritans. Just feel free to call them if you feel that you need to talk to somebody about your challenges, your worries, your concerns. The number's 116 123. It's free to call, and we encourage anybody that seems to is experiencing some problems to give it a call. It really is a useful resource and service and support. There are many other organisations available out there, of course, to contact if you are struggling, and please make sure that you do, because this is important. Talking about mental health is not an issue. We shouldn't make it an issue. We should make it part of our normal everyday conversation, as Karen and I have done today. We've had a nice chat for half an hour about mental health. So thank you all. Please do subscribe to this channel if anybody is listening. I always forget to do that. I'm starting to remember it now. And just want to say thanks again, Karen. And I wish you all the very best to you and your team and your husband and everybody that's around you. Sending lots of positive energy to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.